My friends, if you were to search for the one word, the single sound, that holds the most concentrated power to open a human heart or to slam it shut, you would not need to look in a dictionary of grand oratory. You would not need to study the speeches of conquerors. You would need only to listen for the sound that every head turns to from the moment of infancy. The sound that, when heard, makes the child smile, the adult soften, the elder remember. It is the sweetest, the most important sound in any language to the person who owns it. It is, of course, their own name. In all the noise of the world, amidst the clamor of titles and positions of sir and madam and hey you, a person's name is the one thing that belongs to them alone. It is the anchor of their identity. It is the verbal fingerprint of their soul. To remember it, to use it correctly, and to say it with warmth is to perform a silent act of profound respect. To forget it, to mispronounce it carelessly, or to replace it with a generic label is to commit a subtle but deep act of disregard. We are now entering the territory of Chapter 6, and its principle is deceptively simple, yet its application is a masterstroke of human art. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Consider the hive. A bee does not have a name as we understand it, but it carries a unique signature, a chemical identity that marks it as part of the whole. In the human hive, our name is that signature. When you use it, you are not just making a sound. You are acknowledging, I see you, not a role, not a function, but you in your unique and singular humanity. You are in that moment placing a drop of honey directly on their tongue. And yet, here lies our common failure. We are introduced to someone, and within 60 seconds, their name has vanished from our mind like smoke. We meet a colleague in the hall and fumble, our eyes glazing over in panic as we resort to, hello there, or good to see you, buddy. We trade business cards that become tombstones in a drawer, the name on them already forgotten. We are so preoccupied with the impression we are making, with the clever thing we will say next, that we let the most crucial piece of connection fall through the sieve of our self-absorption. I recall a story about a young political organizer working in a dense, bustling neighborhood where every vote was fought for, every handshake mattered. His opponent was better funded, better connected. But this young man had one discipline. Whenever he met a potential voter, he would not just shake hands and move on. He would look them in the eye, hear their name, and then repeat it. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Calabrese. Then he would make a quiet, almost unnoticeable association in his mind. Mrs. Calabrese, with the kind eyes like my grandmother who grew calabash gourds. It took a second. A day later, he would see her tending her window box. He would walk over and say, Good afternoon, Mrs. Calabrese. How are your flowers today? The effect was not political. It was personal. It was magical. She was not a number on a list. She was Mrs. Calabrese remembered, and when election day came, she remembered him. Contrast this with the experience of a brilliant executive I once knew. He was a powerhouse of ideas, a visionary, but he could not remember the names of the people who worked for him. He called every junior assistant young man or dear. He would point and snap his fingers. His ideas were gold, but his team's morale was lead. They executed his orders, but they did not invest their hearts. Why? Because he had never invested the basic currency of respect, the effort to know who they were. He saw human cogs, not human beings with names. And a cog has no loyalty. It only has friction. The art of remembering a name is not a parlor trick. It is the foundational art of making a person feel seen. It says, "You made an impression. You matter enough to occupy a space in my memory." In a world that makes so many feel anonymous, this is a gift of incalculable value. So, how do we cultivate this art? How do we move from being chronic forgetters to becoming gracious rememberers? It requires a shift from passive hearing to active engagement. It is a discipline of attention. First, you must decide to care. This is the non-negotiable first step. You must place a higher value on the person in front of you than on your own internal monologue. When you are introduced, let this be your sole mission, to capture and retain that name. Make it a game, a challenge, a point of personal honor. Second, you must hear it clearly. Do not be afraid to say, "I'm sorry, I want to be sure I get this right. Could you repeat your name for me?" Or, "That's a beautiful name. How do you spell it?" This is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of immense respect. You are signaling that accuracy matters, that they matter. Third, you must use it immediately. Weave it into the next few sentences of your conversation. "So, Michael, what brings you to this event?" That's a fascinating point, Priya. The act of speaking the name aloud anchors it in your mind and, more importantly, creates a bond of familiarity in their heart. Fourth, create a mental association. This is the secret weapon. Link their name to something vivid. It could be their face. David has a strong jaw, like David's statue. It could be their profession. Anya is an architect. Anya builds structures. It could be a rhyme, an image, however silly it seems to you. The brain remembers the bizarre and the visual. This mental hook is what you will use to retrieve the name later. Fifth, write it down. After a meeting, after a conference, take 30 seconds. Jot down the names you learned next to a identifying note. Samuel Red Glasses, passionate about beekeeping. This physical act of recording is a powerful reinforcement. It turns a fleeting moment into a committed fact. Now, let us consider the deeper psychology. Why does this simple act wield such power? Because a name is not just a label. It is a story. It carries heritage, the hopes of parents, cultural identity, personal history. When you honor someone's name, you are honoring that story. You are saying, "I acknowledge your journey. I acknowledge your lineage. I acknowledge your existence as a distinct and valuable thread in the tapestry." I think of a woman who came to one of my courses many years ago. She had an unusual, complex name from a language unfamiliar to most in the room. For years, she had endured people shortening it, anglicizing it, or simply avoiding it. She had begun to introduce herself with a simplified nickname, shrinking her own identity for the comfort of others. One evening, a gentleman in the group made the effort. He asked her to pronounce it slowly. He repeated it until he got it right. He used it throughout the evening. At the end of the session, she had tears in her eyes. "For the first time in a long time," she said, "I felt like I was all here. Thank you for letting me be me." That is the power we are discussing. It is not about social etiquette. It is about human dignity. My friends, if you have followed our journey thus far, you have learned to tend the hive with genuine interest. You have learned to open the door with a sincere smile. You have learned to honor the unique signature of a soul by remembering its name. Now, we come to a principle that may seem, at first glance, to be a mere extension of interest. But I assure you, It is a master discipline all its own. It is the difference between looking at a garden and actually sinking your hands into the soil. It is the active, sacred practice that transforms interest from a feeling into a force. We enter chapter 7, and its wisdom is this: be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. The greatest temptation in any conversation, the siren song that has shipwrecked countless connections, is the urge to be interesting. But the highest art, the most magnetic power you can possibly cultivate, is the art of being interested. And the only instrument for this art is a listening ear, an ear that is patient, quiet, and utterly focused. Think once more of our hive. The constant gentle hum is not a noise of proclamation. It is a sound of constant vibrational communication, a listening. A bee does not buzz its own importance. It attunes itself to the frequencies of the colony. It listens for the needs, the directions, the signals of the whole. The productivity of the hive depends on this receptive attunement far more than on any solitary bee's solo flight. Yet, in our human interactions, we so often confuse talking with leading, with impressing with winning. We believe the one who holds the floor holds the power. This is a tragic illusion. The one who holds the floor merely holds the microphone. The true power resides in the one who controls the stage, the attentive, generous listener who invites another to step into the light and be heard. The bitter truth is that most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. They are merely waiting for their turn to speak. Their mind is not a sanctuary for your thoughts. It is a factory busily manufacturing its own next product. In such an exchange, no real meeting occurs. Two monologues do not make a dialogue. I am reminded of a distinguished publisher who once told me of a long, lavish luncheon he had with a renowned novelist. The novelist, famous for her vibrant prose, spoke for the entire 2 hours. She spoke of her travels, her critiques of other writers, her theories on art. The publisher, a man of no small accomplishment himself, simply listened. He nodded. He asked a brief clarifying question here and there, but primarily he gave her the gift of his silent, absorbed attention. As they parted, the novelist grasped his hand with genuine warmth and said, "What a magnificent conversationalist you are! This was one of the most stimulating afternoons of my life." The publisher, in recounting this to me, smiled a wise, gentle smile. I had said almost nothing, he confessed, but I had listened to everything, and in doing so, I allowed her to hear herself think, to articulate her own genius. She did not leave impressed by me. She left impressed by herself, in my presence. And that, my friend, is the foundation of a lasting bond. Do you see the profound mechanics at work here? When you encourage someone to talk about themselves, about their ideas, their triumphs, their concerns, you are not merely gathering data. You are providing them with a rare and precious service, the service of self-clarification. In the act of articulating their thoughts to a receptive audience, they often discover what they truly think and feel. You become the mirror in which they see their own mind more clearly. And who does not feel affection for such a mirror? Now, how does one move from being a passive hearer to becoming an active, encouraging listener? It is a craft, and it requires specific, deliberate practices. First, you must cultivate the posture of listening. This begins not with your ears, but with your entire body. Turn your whole self toward the person. Let your eyes soften and remain on theirs. Uncross your arms. Lean in slightly. Your physical orientation broadcasts your mental orientation before you utter a word. It says, "You have my complete audience." Second, you must master the silent pause. When they finish a thought, do not rush in to fill the space. Allow a beat of silence to hang in the air. This silence is not emptiness. It is respectful space, indicating that their words have weight and deserve to settle. Often, in that quiet space, they will venture deeper, offering the gem they were initially hesitant to share. Third, you must employ the encouraging nod and murmur. A simple, "I see," or "Go on," or "How fascinating," is not an interruption. It is a catalyst. It is fuel for their narrative engine. It tells them they are on safe ground, that their story is welcomed and valued. Fourth, and this is the master key, ask questions that journey further into their world. Do not ask questions that pivot back to you. Ask questions that follow their thread. If they mention a project, ask not just about the outcome, but about the obstacle they are most proud of overcoming. If they speak of a childhood memory, ask what the light smelled like in that room, or what song was playing. Your questions should be like a gentle guide, leading them deeper into the landscape of their own experience. What did that mean for you? And how did you feel when that happened? These are the keys that unlock the inner chambers. Fifth, practice reflective listening. Periodically, reflect back what you have heard in your own words. So, if I understand you correctly, the real triumph wasn't the award itself, but the fact your team believed in the idea. This does two miraculous things. It proves you are truly following, and it gives them the chance to see their own thought reflected and to refine it. It is the highest form of respect. The benefits of this discipline are not merely social, they are profoundly strategic. A successful sales executive once told me his secret was never to pitch a product in the first meeting. His entire goal was to ask questions and listen for 90 minutes. He listened for the client's frustrations, their unspoken ambitions, their departmental pains. By the end, he often knew what the client needed better than the client did, and when he finally spoke, his proposal was not a generic sales sheet, it was a mirror, reflecting the client's own words and needs back to them. He didn't have to sell, he simply had to show them he had listened and then offer the solution that fit the problem they had just described. But let us move beyond strategy, into the realm of the human heart. I think of a man who felt his marriage had grown cold, conversational, barren. He and his wife exchanged information, but no longer shared worlds. He decided, as an experiment, to listen to her for one evening as if she were the most important person on earth. He turned off the television. He put down his paper. He asked her about her day, and then he just listened. He didn't offer fixes. He didn't compare her experiences to his own. He just listened, with the questions and the nods and the silence. After an hour, she paused and looked at him, her eyes glistening. "It feels like you came home tonight," she said. The listening was the homecoming. This is the ultimate truth this chapter imparts. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. And when you listen to someone deeply and truly, you make them feel intelligent, valued, fascinating, and significant. You give them the emotional experience of being important, and from that fertile ground, every good thing, trust, affection, loyalty, influence, naturally grows. In the economy of the human hive, your listening is the pollen you gather from every flower. It is the raw material of understanding. Without it, there can be no honey of true connection. Stop trying to be the most interesting voice in the room. Strive instead to be the most interested presence. Let your silence be profound. Let your questions be generous. Let your attention be a gift. For when you encourage a person to talk about themselves and you listen with your whole being, you are doing more than passing time. You are honoring a life. You are saying, your story is a sacred text, and for this hour I am its devoted and humble scribe. And in that sacred space, friendship is forged, influence is earned, and the hive once again grows stronger, sweeter, and whole. Go and practice this quiet power. You may say very little, but you will hear worlds, and in hearing you will be heard. Good day.